Today I'm going to talk about video games and the impact that they have on international social change. As you all know, video games have had significant growth both in the United States and internationally in the last 10 to 20 years. So today we're going to look a little bit about the negative and positive impacts video games have had internationally. To start, it's important to kind of identify what video games are. So there are all types of games. There's hand games like patty cake, there's outdoor games like hide and go seek. Video games are a specific niche. So they are games in which people interact with a digital medium. As you might expect, video games have a pretty rich history, starting back in the 1800s, but they really didn't come to fruition until the late 1900s. Around 1970-ish, they started to come into play with an individual named Nolan Bushnell, who had a very big impact on the development of the Atari and several other gaming. As you can guess, internationally they have a big impact. For example, in China has a very unique relationship with video games. Did you know China actually has had the longest running ban on console games? In fact, they were illegal, which is starting to become a hot button issue right now in China. They're considering legalizing them. Japan is like the United States. They're they love their video games. They have a long history of video games. They have some of the best video game developing companies in the world, like Nintendo, and they had Sega, and they do a lot with PlayStation and Sony. So they love video games, and video gamers love Japanese video games. United States, we have millions and millions, almost 128 million video game users. We are a gamer nation. And those people range from elementary school kids all the way up to 50, 70 plus aged people. So we love our video games here in the United States. As you might expect, video games have also different subsections within the market. For example, my favorite is role-playing games. Many other Americans enjoy things like sports games, first-person shooters, and action games, which tend to be the more violent of all the different varieties. I picked this particular picture because it really points to the idea that a lot of people have about video games, that they're wastes of time, that they have no solid usages, and that kids who play them tend to have a lot of different impacts. But that's not always true, and we'll see a little bit about that. We'll start with the negative impacts. So a lot of the ideas about video games are that young people specifically end up developing violent tendencies through playing violent video games. And that's something that is a pretty common perception among parents, among scholars, among scientists, social scientists. And there's a lot of research out there that supports that. For example, this image here of the Columbine shootings. It might be easy to believe that. However, more and more statistics are showing that this doesn't necessarily hold true. But this is a common perception among many people. Another common perception is that video games and video game usage leads to obesity, which is not necessarily true as well. But as we look through this little chain here, you can see how people might come to believe that. It has a lot to do with the overall system, but this is definitely a big part of what people believe about video games. Let's talk a little bit about some positives. A lot of studies have shown recently that video games can have a very positive impact on motor function, on memory, and on socialization for older adults, for like grandparents and great-grandparents. So this is a very important thing to point out about video games and how it can actually have a beautiful positive impact. Another really interesting statistic that I found while looking over this specific topic is that video games aren't necessarily linked with increasing violent crime by juveniles. This is actually a statistic from the Bureau of Justice Statistics showing that specifically. Another really interesting positive to think about is video games and new ways of learning. More and more schools are beginning to use video games as a means to teach students, especially in the STEM fields, which I'll talk a little bit more about when I get to the direct impacts. But this is a great way to demonstrate positive and beneficial uses of video games. Another great way to demonstrate that is through e-games. which we saw a little bit about when we were looking at the Gamers for Change. But e-games is a new sporting arena within which video gamers can shine. They actually get paid millions of dollars to do it, and it could be any person that you imagine could be up there winning and being a really great esport competitor. So this opens up a lot of new areas for different types of people to participate in. That brings me to Gamers for Change. Our classmate Keaton talked a little bit about that, and I thought it was really exciting to hear one of our other classmates talk about video games and the positive impacts that they can have. I know the gamer Athene takes $4 donations and then donates those to Save the Children, which goes to is a nonprofit that actually really does save children in Africa. Another great direct impact organization is Games for Change. And I talked a little bit about them in class, but they are a nonprofit organization that acts as a library for a variety of different environmental, social impact, and health video games. One of them is this game here, Half the Sky Movement, which was a book, then became a documentary. Now it's a video game that can be played on Facebook, which has direct impacts out into the global community. I love this. I'm actually probably going to play it at some point, even though I'm not a big Facebooker. But I think this is a great way to have a direct impact, but also have fun. Another great example of this is the game Super Better, which is designed to help build core strengths like physical, mental, and emotional strength through challenges. This is a great example, and it brings me to my last point. Video games are works of art, and it's important to start considering them as such.